Hello everybody, welcome back to Water Moon Cards. This is Luna, and this is my response to the revamped deck recheck hashtag. I have a whole video explaining what this tag is and what all the prompts are, so I'm just going to dive right in. I do encourage you, if you want to do a response to this, not to just watch this video, but actually watch the other one where I explain everything, because there's some options. The first category of deck is one you haven't used at all, and for me that is going to be this guy, the Tarot de Marseille of the New Incarnation. The first prompt for this first category is how or why you required it. I actually requested this as a holiday gift a few years ago. So the premise of this deck is that it's going to make it more uniform, I guess, by pulling in tales from the historic time period in which the Tarot de Marseille was rendered, rather than using the esoteric associations illustrated like the Pamela Coleman Smith, Rider-Waite-Smith deck and the Thoth, the Crowley deck. So I wanted to give it a try, but then I did try it and I found it very clunky to read with. And this deck does come with a booklet that tells you all the fables, and they've written fables not just for the 1 through 10 to explain these scenes, so I'll show you some more, but they've also written fables for all of the court cards and the triumphs from original Marseille that they base this on. What I've realized and recognized, and maybe should have recognized at the time, is that I don't really do fable-based decks. It's just too much of another set of associations on top of what I already understand about tarot for me to want to go through and learn 78, once upon a time there was a young lad who sought his fortune in the town next door, and then the neighbor did this, and the king said that, and the blah, 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 and the princess wasn't in love with him, and then he did some more stuff, and then she was in love with him, and then the fox got the coin, and the chariot ran away. I can't. It's just too much added. And I kind of should have known this. I used to have the Tarot of the Divine, which is an absolutely gorgeous deck that I really enjoyed looking at. But again, there were a lot of entities, divinities, fairies, etc. that were in that deck that I wasn't familiar with, and I just wasn't willing to learn who all the people were. And in thinking about making this video, I thought, well, I could actually sit down and do a more intensive deck study and actually bother to learn all of these new fables. I just don't want to. I don't like the color scheme of this deck. It's very primary colors, which is very traditional. I think what I could do is photocopy this booklet and just keep it for myself. It's really the guidebook, the information in the guidebook that I'm most interested in, if I'm interested in anything. But in terms of the aesthetics of this deck, how it looks in a reading, I'm not feeling it, and I've had it for over 2 years now, so I don't think that's going to change. Next up, we have the Druidcraft Tarot deck by Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gomm, illustrated by Will Worthington. This is my oldie but a goodie, and I originally bought this because I really liked the artwork, and I also got it because I had some working to do on my past religious trauma from growing up in a Southern Baptist Christian kind of environment. Not my parents, but my immediate family were kind of harsh in their beliefs. And so I had to go through some, personal reassessment and healing and so forth to kind of get to a place where I didn't mind working with Christian imagery. And this deck, because it's based in a sort of a pagan or English druid paradigm, deletes Christianity out of this imagery pretty well. So you have, for example, instead of temperance, you have the fearlet. I hope I'm saying that right. So more of an alchemical kind of take on this card. You have this for the High Priestess, which is very much not like the Papess or the High Priestess in most decks. But this Judgment card, even though it has a bit of a Jesus emerging from the tomb aspect, it's called Rebirth, and that jives much more with my Buddhist point of view than the typical Judgment card. I did not use it at first because the cards were too big, and again, cutting the borders off really helped with that. I left a little bit of this stone border, but took the the larger borders off. That helped, and I did use it for a long time. And then now I'm just not reaching it for it as much because it's pretty, but I have got so many other decks in my collection that I really like. And it feels sort of like whole wheat bread or oatmeal or something. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I can certainly read with it just fine, but it's just kind of there, you know? And I'm okay with that. I'm still going to hold on to this. I put in so much time trying to modify it, and I think I did a pretty damn good job, if I say so myself. So I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to have it on my shelf, and you know, I'll keep offering it to people. I do sometimes put it out on my table, or you know, pull it out when friends come over and offer to read with it. It's just the other people even don't really pick this one. They pick other imagery instead. So that's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, and I don't mind having a few decks around that I don't use often. I still think the imagery is very beautiful, and so I'm going to keep it in my collection. All right, and then the last category is a deck that makes you reassess. This one is the most obvious choice right now, and this is the Banksy Tarot. It is based on the artist's work. It is not by the artist. It is assembled by someone called Coop-de-Loo. I got this deck because I felt like I wanted more art decks in my collection, and I felt like I needed sort of a punk, you know, anarchist, politically savvy, stick it to the man kind of deck. I didn't really have one of those. And I have, you know, friends here on TarotTube who really like decks in that area and work well with them. And I was trying to look for something, and this seemed like maybe the most likely candidate. And I do really like it. I like the imagery and so forth. But I don't use it for a couple of reasons. One is that it's got some really challenging imagery. And I think, you know, for other people, certainly this could, like something like this could be super upsetting. It's also difficult for me because I feel like this deck is really a gut punch kind of deck. And like, it really doesn't matter what your question is. The answer is going to be like, fuck you, get your shit together or something. You're a whiny baby. You know, this is a child soldier. Like, this is a really hard image for the father of spray cans. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I can read with it. I understand the answers, but they're just all like slap you in the face. It's kind of mean. So I don't really read with it for that reason. And maybe that's just me being very sensitive and not wanting to face reality in the world as it is. But yeah, I don't really read with it very much. You know, that sort of also makes me think like, well, what do I really want out of my collection? You know, am I collecting things just for the sake of it? Do I need to be able to read with every single deck that I have? Is it okay to have some, you know, art decks or decks that just kind of push my buttons like this, but aren't really readers for me? You know, and I don't know that I have all the answers to that question. I'm not ready to part with this yet. And I'm not totally out of space yet, but this could get sold off again or passed on to somebody else if I get to that point where I'm just not sure that it's worth having around anymore. Again, really respect the artist and what he does, Banksy does, and I like having a collection of his art. So that's the other thing that makes me want to hold on to this. But in terms of, you know, deeper motivations than that, I can't say I really have any. And maybe that's okay too. So that's my conclusion for this deck recheck. I'm going to keep Banksy and probably not read with it. I'm going to keep the Druid Craft, and maybe I'll just force myself to do more readings with this. You know, I'll just maybe make a list of decks I don't use as much and put this one on there and just make sure I am actually using it every once in a while. And for the Tarot de Marseille of the New Incarnation, I'm going to sell this and move on with my life. And if I want to do a deck study or the Drop 'em 78 tag, I have a couple of others that I'm more excited to learn about in depth. And just to wrap up, I also want to tag a few specific people that I hope will respond to this. Either folks who responded to the original, and I'd love to hear a follow-up a few years later. What did you do? How did things work out? If you haven't responded to this tag before, maybe because your channel's new, I'd love to get your take on this, and if there's any thing in your collection that you wanted to reassess. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.